The cane snaps in her hands. My son's hands fly to his mouth. The sound is small, sharp, final. Ethan freezes in his seat. His fingers search the air where his cane used to be. "You people," she says, "should not be allowed to fly." Her voice fills the cabin. Every head turns. I do not move yet. My son whispers my name. Just once. Quiet. Scared. The white cane lies in two pieces on the floor between us. Ethan has used that cane since he was 7 years old. He is 11 now. He built his whole world around its rhythm, its tap, its promise that the ground would always be there before his next step. She dropped it. She stepped on it. She twisted it under her heel like it offended her. The woman in the cobalt blue blazer looks down at what she has done and does not apologize. Instead, she straightens her jacket like she is the one who has been wronged. "He kept hitting my seat with it," she says. "I have rights too." A flight attendant starts toward us. Her name tag says Dana. Her hands are shaking. I am not shaking. I have not shaken in 14 years. Somewhere above my heart, clipped inside my jacket, is the only thing in this cabin more dangerous than what she just did to my son. She has no idea what she just started. But to understand why this moment changed everything, I need to take you back to where this all began. My name doesn't matter yet. What matters is that 6 hours earlier, I was just a father trying to get his son home for a birthday. Ethan turned 11 3 days ago. We celebrated late because I was working. I am always working in a way most people never see, and most people never need to see. 14 years ago, I made a choice about the kind of life I would live. A life built on quiet vigilance, on watching rooms full of strangers and hoping nothing ever happens in them. That morning, the badge clipped inside my jacket pocket felt heavier than usual. I told myself it was nothing, just fatigue, just a long week. I did not know yet that it was a warning I should have listened to. Ethan lost his sight to a rare genetic condition when he was 6. He does not remember colors the way I do. He remembers sounds instead. He can tell you which gate agent has kind eyes just by the way she says "next" over a microphone. He can hear a stranger's mood in the way they exhale. He is braver than most adults I have met, and I have met people in the worst moments of their lives. We boarded early. Priority boarding is one of the few comforts I allow myself when we travel together. Because Ethan needs time to map the cabin with his hands before the aisle fills with elbows and rolling bags. He touched every armrest between the door and our row like he was reading a book only he could feel. The cabin smelled like coffee and recycled air. Soft chatter. The safety video murmuring somewhere unseen. Ordinary. Peaceful. The kind of morning where nothing is supposed to go wrong. Ethan settled into the window seat, though he could not see out of it. He liked the hum of the engine near his ear. I sat beside him, his cane resting between us like it always did, folded and quiet, waiting for the day to need it again. My only goal that day was simple: get my son home. Get him to his birthday dinner, where his grandmother was waiting with a cake he had been describing in exact detail for a week. That was the whole plan. Just a father and his son, and a very short flight between two ordinary cities. Then she got on the plane. She walked down the aisle like she owned the plane and every soul inside it. Early 40s, maybe pushing 50, blonde hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. A cobalt blue blazer, matching trousers, heels too sharp for economy class. Her perfume arrived before she did. She stopped at row 14 and looked at her ticket like it had personally betrayed her. "This is not my seat," she announced to no one and everyone. "I specifically request the bulkhead." Every time. The gate agent who had followed her down the jet bridge tried to explain, gently, that the seating had already been finalized. "I don't care what the system says," she snapped. "Do you know how many miles I fly a year? I should not be treated like this." A few passengers exchanged glances. One man across the aisle put his headphones in a little faster than necessary. This was a small incident, barely worth noticing, except for what it revealed. Entitlement does not arrive quietly. It arrives loud, and it arrives first over something small, before it ever touches something that matters. She finally sat 2 rows ahead of us, muttering, arranging her bags with sharp, irritated movements, as if the seat back itself had personally failed her. Then she turned around. Her eyes moved down the aisle and landed on Ethan. I felt it before I understood it. A shift in the air. The particular stillness that comes right before a storm decides where to land. She noticed him, and I knew, the way I have known in 100 rooms before this one, that something bad was coming. It started small enough that a stranger might have missed it entirely. Ethan shifted in his seat to get comfortable, and his cane, folded flat across his lap, tapped lightly against the seat back in front of him. Once. Barely a sound at all. She spun around like she had been struck. "Can you please control that?" she said, voice sharp enough to cut through the cabin hum. "Some of us are trying to relax." I kept my voice level. "I'm sorry. He's blind. He's just getting settled." "That's not my problem," she said. "Maybe he should sit somewhere else." The tap happened once more. An accident. Ethan startled by her volume. And this time she stood halfway out of her seat. "Are you serious right now? I am not doing this for 5 hours. A flight attendant appeared, calm and practiced, the kind of calm that comes from years of defusing exactly this kind of moment. She explained gently that the flight was full and no other seats were available. Karen was not interested in gentle. "I fly this airline every single week," she said, loud enough that 3 rows could hear her. "You will find me another seat, or I will make sure corporate hears about how this flight was handled." The flight attendant tried again, softer this time, asking for patience. Karen turned back toward us instead, eyes locking on Ethan with something colder than irritation now. Maybe he should learn some manners before he flies with normal people. I felt something tighten low in my chest, but I have spent 14 years learning the difference between a threat and a nuisance, and learning how to hold my face still while I decide which one I am looking at. "He's a child," I said quietly. "He didn't do anything wrong." "Everyone can hear that thing," she snapped. "It's disruptive. I paid for peace and quiet." Ethan's hand found my sleeve and gripped it. He did not say anything. He had learned, the way children with disabilities sometimes learn too early, that saying something back only makes strangers louder. I told myself this was manageable. I told myself the flight was short, and difficult people existed everywhere, and my job that day was simply to be a good father and let the noise pass over us like weather. I made a promise to myself in that moment. Stay calm. Protect Ethan. Do not give her anything to escalate. I did not know yet how badly that promise was about to be tested. 15 minutes into the flight, she leaned into the aisle and locked eyes with a passenger 2 rows back, a young man with headphones and an easy, tired smile. "Can you believe this?" she said to him, gesturing at us like we were an exhibit. "They let anyone fly now." The man looked uncomfortable and said nothing, sliding his headphones back into place. Ethan's cane rested across his lap, folded and harmless, and yet she stared at it like it was a weapon aimed directly at her peace of mind. "Ma'am," Dana the flight attendant said, crouching slightly beside her row, "I understand you're frustrated. I really do, but there is nothing disruptive happening here." "Then you sit next to it for 5 hours, Karen said. Her voice had climbed another register now, sharp enough that the cabin lighting seemed to dim around it. "This is discrimination," she added, though no one asked, though nothing about the moment matched that word. "I have every right to fly in comfort." Dana tried once more, calm and steady, to explain that seating could not be changed mid-flight for this reason. Karen overrode her completely. "I want a supervisor," she said. "The moment we land, I want a supervisor, and I want that family moved." I sat very still. My hands rested flat on my knees, the way I train myself to sit in rooms where control matters more than comfort. Somewhere beneath the calm, a small ember of anger had started to glow, quiet, contained, patient. Ethan whispered, so soft only I could hear it. "Dad, is she going to make us leave?" "No," I told him. "Nobody is taking you anywhere." I meant it as comfort. I did not yet know how true it would become, in a way neither of us expected. 3 minutes later, everything changed. Ethan shifted again, reaching for his water bottle, and his cane slid slightly against the seat in front of him. Karen turned around fully this time, her face flushed, her voice dropping into something colder than her earlier complaints. "You," she said, pointing directly at Ethan. "Do you understand you're ruining this flight for everyone?" He flinched, his unseeing eyes turned toward her voice, searching for a face he would never see, trying to read a threat through sound alone. "He can't see you," I said quietly. "He doesn't know you're pointing at him." "Then maybe he shouldn't be flying without a babysitter," she said. A woman across the aisle finally spoke up. "He's a kid. Leave him alone." "Mind your own business," Karen snapped back. Another passenger, older, gray-haired, leaned forward. "Ma'am, you're the one being disruptive right now." Karen ignored him too, riding on a wave of anger that no longer needed permission from anyone around her. I noticed a phone rise near the back of the cabin, held low, recording quietly. I noticed the young man with headphones now watching us instead of his screen, his expression tight with disbelief. I noticed Dana glance toward the front galley, toward the intercom, weighing whether this had crossed a line worth reporting. Then Karen reached across the gap between our rows. Her fingers closed around Ethan's cane. "Since he can't seem to keep this still," she said, "maybe I'll just hold on to it." Ethan's hand shot out instinctively, trying to hold onto the only tool that let him navigate a world he could not see. She yanked it free, and then, in one motion driven by pure, unearned fury, she bent it against the seat back and snapped it in half. The cabin went silent. Ethan's face crumpled, not from pain, but from something worse. The sudden, total loss of the thing that made him independent. This cannot go unanswered. She got what she wanted. A different flight attendant, a supervisor named Marcus, arrived from the front of the plane after Karen's complaints reached the cockpit crew through a call button pressed 6 times in 10 minutes. He knelt beside her row, his voice apologetic in a way that made my stomach turn. "Ma'am, I understand there's been a disturbance," he said. "We're going to move you to a quieter section." He meant her, not us. "Finally," Karen said, gathering her bag with a satisfied little huff, as though she had won something meaningful. "Some competence." Marcus turned toward me next, his expression softer, but no less firm. "Sir, would you mind keeping your son's belongings contained for the rest of the flight? We've had multiple complaints." Ethan was crying quietly beside me, his hands searching his lap for the cane that no longer existed in one piece. I wanted to say everything. I wanted to explain in detail exactly what had happened, exactly who had broken what, exactly who the real disruption was. Instead I said only, "Understood," because arguing in that moment would only humiliate my son further in front of a cabin full of strangers. Karen was moved 2 rows up, into a slightly quieter section, escorted like a woman who had been wronged instead of a woman who had just destroyed a blind child's mobility. Ethan leaned into my shoulder, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, how am I going to walk when we land?" I had no answer that would not break something in me to say out loud. The lowest point of my life as a father was not a war zone, and it was not a threat with a weapon. It was watching my blind son sit in a plane seat with a broken cane in his lap, humiliated in front of 80 strangers, while the woman who broke him something he needed to survive his own world was given a quieter seat as a reward. I felt every instinct in my training scream at me to act, and every instinct as a father tell me to wait, to choose the moment with precision instead of anger. And that was the moment I decided Karen had made the last mistake of her very comfortable life. 20 minutes later, she was not finished. She had been given a seat beside an older gentleman near the front, and within minutes, she had found a new target for her fury. "Excuse me," she said loudly to a flight attendant walking past. "I would like compensation for this. Real compensation, not vouchers." The attendant explained, politely, that any compensation request would need to go through customer service after landing. "This is unacceptable," Karen said, her voice rising again, drawing eyes from every row around her. "Do you know who I could call about this?" She did not seem to notice or care that half the cabin had already pulled out phones, quietly filming the woman who had broken a blind child's cane and was now demanding a reward for the disturbance she herself had caused. An older woman near the front finally spoke, her voice steady and clear enough to carry. "You broke that little boy's cane. Maybe sit down and be quiet." Karen's face twisted with something between shock and fury, as if the idea of consequence had never once occurred to her. "Excuse me?" she said. "I don't even know that family. This is not my fault, he can't control his things." The old man beside her shifted uncomfortably, sliding as far from her as his seatbelt allowed. She stood up in the aisle, ignoring the seatbelt sign, ignoring Dana's repeated request to sit down, and pointed back toward our row. "That child needs to be removed from this flight," she said, loud enough for the entire cabin to hear. "I want him gone. I want them both gone." The cabin fell into a strange, heavy silence. I stood up. I did not raise my voice. I did not clench my fists. I simply stood, the way I have stood in rooms far more dangerous than this one, and I let the silence stretch until it filled every seat around us. Karen looked at me, still furious, still certain of her own righteousness. "And what exactly do you think you're going to do?" she said. I reached slowly into my jacket. My fingers found the small leather case I have carried every day for 14 years. I did not rush. I let every eye in the cabin follow the movement of my hand. Let the silence do the work that shouting never could. I opened the case and held it up, steady, at chest height so the entire section could see it clearly. "Federal Air Marshal," I said. "Badge number 44112. The words did not echo. They did not need to. A woman near the back gasped audibly. Someone's phone lowered slowly, as if the person holding it had forgotten they were filming at all. Karen's face changed in stages. First confusion, as if the words had not fully translated. Then a flicker of disbelief, her mouth opening slightly, searching for a response that would not come. Then something colder, a slow drain of color from her cheeks, as the full weight of what she had just done settled onto her shoulders in real time. I didn't know," she stammered. "How was I supposed to know that? That doesn't change anything," he was being. "You destroyed federal property," I said quietly. "A mobility device is protected under disability law. You assaulted a minor's medical equipment in front of 80 witnesses. I want to speak to someone in charge," she said, her voice cracking now, all her earlier fire reduced to a thin, panicked whine. "You are," I said. An older man near the front, the one who had been sitting beside her, said quietly but clearly, "She really did just do all that to a blind kid." Karen sat down hard, her hands shaking, all the entitled certainty of the last hour gone from her face completely. The captain's voice came over the intercom moments later, requesting law enforcement meet the aircraft upon arrival due to an in-flight incident, and Karen flinched at every word like each one landed as a physical blow. The wheels touched down 17 minutes later, though it felt like an hour had passed inside that silence. 2 airport police officers boarded first, before any other passenger was allowed to stand. I met them at the front of the cabin, identified myself, and gave a brief, precise account. Assault on a minor's assistive device. Multiple witnesses. Recorded footage available from at least 4 separate passengers. Karen tried one final defense as the officers approached her row. "He was hitting my seat," she said, voice small now, stripped of all its earlier volume. "I didn't mean to break it. It was an accident." "Ma'am," one officer said. "Witnesses say you grabbed the cane out of his hands and broke it deliberately. That's not an accident." "I fly this airline every week," she said, as if that fact had ever meant anything to anyone but herself. "I have status." "Not anymore," Marcus said quietly from behind the officers, holding a small tablet with the airline's incident report already open. "You are permanently banned from this airline effective immediately." A woman near the back stood and offered her phone footage without being asked, her voice firm. "I got the whole thing, from the seat kick complaint to the cane." Karen looked around the cabin for anyone, any single face, willing to defend her. No one did. "Ma'am, you are being detained for questioning regarding an assault," the officer said, guiding her by the arm into the aisle. The cabin was silent except for the soft, rhythmic click of her heels as she was walked toward the exit, past every row of passengers who had watched what she had done to a child who could not even see her face. Ethan gripped my hand tightly as she passed us, and for the first time since the cane broke, his shoulders relaxed slightly, as if some invisible weight had finally lifted from them. She did not look at him as she left. Perhaps she could not bring herself to. The cabin felt different after she was gone. The air seemed lighter somehow, as if the plane itself had been holding its breath and had only now remembered how to exhale. Passengers began gathering their bags in a hush that felt less like exhaustion and more like relief. A woman from 3 rows back stopped beside our seat, kneeling slightly to speak directly to Ethan. "Hey, buddy," she said gently. "You did nothing wrong today. Nothing at all." Ethan nodded, his unseeing eyes turned toward her voice, a small, tired smile finally breaking through. The older man who had sat beside Karen stopped as well, resting a hand briefly on my shoulder. "Thank you for staying calm back there. Not everyone could have done that." I thanked him, though calm had cost me more that day than anything my training had ever demanded before. I turned to Ethan and knelt in front of him, checking the broken cane still resting across his lap, its 2 halves held together only by the strip of reflective tape near its center. "We'll get you a new one today," I told him. "I promise." "Dad," he said quietly, "were you scared?" "No," I told him honestly. "I was angry. There's a difference." He reached for my hand, found it easily, the way he found everything in his world, by trusting his other senses completely. What this day confirmed for me was simple, and it was not new, but it landed harder than it ever had before. Cruelty rarely announces itself honestly. It hides behind blue blazers and frequent flyer status and the certainty that rules exist for other people. And kindness, when it finally appears, often arrives quietly, in a stranger's crouch beside a child's seat, in a hand on a shoulder, in a whispered thank you from someone who had simply watched and understood. The airline replaced Ethan's cane before we left the airport that afternoon. A temporary aluminum model that clicked differently against tile than his old one had. A small detail he mentioned 3 separate times on the drive home. Karen was charged within the week. Assault, destruction of an assistive device protected under federal disability statutes, and disorderly conduct aboard an aircraft. A charge that carries considerably more weight than most people realize until they are the one facing it. Her employer, a regional insurance firm where she had worked for 11 years, terminated her within days of the footage reaching local news outlets. The video, filmed by 3 separate passengers, had been viewed over 11 million times by the time her case reached its first hearing. Ethan, for his part, healed the way children often do, faster than the adults around them expect. He adjusted to his new cane within a week, and by the following month he was tapping his way through school hallways with his usual quiet confidence. The incident folded neatly into the long list of things he had survived and outgrown. For me, something shifted permanently that day. 14 years of training had taught me to read danger in strangers' hands, in their posture, in the things they carried onto planes. It had never fully prepared me for how much danger could live inside simple, casual cruelty, delivered by someone who believed, right up until the moment she did not, that entitlement was the same thing as power. One unexpected outcome came weeks later, when the airline announced a new policy protecting mobility devices explicitly under their onboard conduct guidelines, citing our flight by incident number in the internal memo that eventually became public. A single ugly afternoon had become the reason thousands of future passengers would fly a little safer. Months have passed since that flight. Ethan's new cane has a small dent near the handle now, from ordinary use, from a life lived fully despite what almost stole a piece of it. He still asks me, sometimes, if I was scared that day. I always tell him the same thing. I was not scared. I was simply waiting for the right moment to make sure nobody could ever say his voice did not matter. Some people mistake kindness for weakness, and quiet for permission. They see a child who cannot see them back and decide that means he cannot be hurt in ways that count. But dignity does not depend on how loudly you can defend it. Sometimes it only takes one calm voice, one badge, One father who refused to let cruelty have the last word. If this story reminded you that the quiet ones are often the most prepared, you already know what to do.